Back at it again with the Mobius Dickus, Chapter 12, Biographical. It's another short one. The first ones are short. So a lot of chapters are short here. So I'm not going to talk too long here. I only got a couple passages I want to touch on. But the first one comes in the first two lines. It's just kind of a classic Melvillian, like, pew, shot across the bow, one sentence, and then I'm going to move on. But nevertheless, it's worth talking about. So he says, Kokavoko, the island where Queequeg is from, is not on any map. True places never are. Now, you might say this as like he's talking about like how the non-European countries like aren't represented by the colonial power, man. No, I mean, because he says that true places of any kind never are. So what this really is just perhaps a quick shot at the insufficiency of symbolic representation, that no map has ever captured the lived experience of being in a place, what it smells like, what the people are like, what the food is like, the air, the temperature, right? So the true places, in terms of their experience, are never captured by symbolic representation, which is, a form of how one captures knowledge and understanding of the world. So, like, just a quick little epistemic, metaphysical, hey, by the way, we can't capture true stuff in language or representation. Moving on, classic Melville. You gotta love it. So we learn about Queequeg being the son of the king of Kokavoko, his desire to find passage on a Christian ship, and he eventually, grabs on. It's a pretty compelling tale, right? He says, I'm gonna get on board. They throw him with the sailors, and then there's this kind of like very sad passage here where it says, for at bottom, so he told me, he was actuated, okay, like motivated by or caused, right, motivate. He was motivated by a profound desire to learn among the Christians the arts whereby to make his people still happier than they were, and more than that, still better than they were. So Ishmael has like this very noble goal. But alas, the practices of whalemen soon convinced him that even Christians could be both miserable and wicked, infinitely more so than all his father's heathens. Arrived at last in Old Sag Harbor and seeing what the sailors did there, and then going on to Nantucket and seeing how they spent their wages in that place also, poor Queequeg gave it up for lost. Thought he, it's a wicked world and all meridians. I'll die a pagan. So I think that's kind of pretty heartbreaking, right? Like, this is a guy who risks it all to go find something new, something different, try to find a better way, and he finds just people being degenerates and horrible and worse than the place he came from. Two things here. The first is like, if I was having to refute some English major in college, it was like, I would never read Moby Dick because, like the representations of Queequeg, man, they're so problematic. Like, Queequeg is talked in this like register of being a noble savage and stuff, and I just find that like so problematic. Well, read this paragraph, dog, where Melville completely criticizes the West as being far more degenerate than the quote-unquote savage island that Queequeg is from. Oh, no, man, you don't understand. He's doing the noble savage thing. Savages are either horrible or they're perfect. Okay, man, I guess I can't win, because if people are in these islands are represented as good, it's the noble savage. If they're represented as bad, it's, the dehumanization of the other. So all I know is passage is far more critical of the West than of anyone else. So I find that interesting. And then second, what's interesting here is, isn't this seemingly like a pretty good argument for sympathy, like trying to find connections between us insofar as what we all have in common, even though it seems like the Europeans and the Americans have it more, is this like degenerate nature where we constantly do things that are miserable and wicked. So if we're all capable of this kind of like moral failure, I guess we at least have that in common, right? Like, there's a universalism to this claim that it's a wicked world in all meridians, right? Queequeg has seen that there's something egalitarian about people, even if it's their, horribleness. And then, I just wanted to point out a very funny image to me when Ishmael imagines himself with Queequeg. It says, Queequeg at once resolved to accompany me to that island, ship aboard the same vessel, get into the same watch, the same boat, with the same mess as me, the mess being a noun that used to refer to, they don't have it in any of these definitions. Let's go to full definition. A building or room in which members of the armed forces take their meals. So they're in the kitchen together. And in short, to share my every happiness, with both my hands in his, boldly dip into the potluck of both worlds. I find that a pretty hilarious play on words, because I assume that this is a reference to like a pot of gold that is found in a lucky circumstance, like at the end of a rainbow. But also I think of like our modern understanding of potluck. Like I picture Queequeg and Ishmael lovingly dipping their hands into like a crock pot of chili at your church, like chili bake-off. And it just makes me laugh every time. I honestly don't know if potluck had that definition back in those times, right? Like, here's the reference to a situation that is of good or acceptable chance. And then it says North American, a meal or party to which each of the guests contributes a dish. I don't know whether it would have had that meaning at the time of Melville's writing, but I hope it did, because that would be pretty funny. And then finally, we just have the cutest, like most adorable image of Queequeg and Ishmael to end chapter 12. His story being ended with his pipe's last dying puff. Queequeg embraced me, pressed his forehead against mine, and blowing out the light, we rolled over from each other this way and that, and very soon we're sleeping. They're like an old married couple. I just find it hilarious and like just so cute. Like I'm a big Ishmael and Queequeg shipper. Like I want them to be happy together. We'll see if that's what happens in Moby Dick, but it's pretty adorable no matter what. Okay, that's a quick chapter. I'm not going to spend any more time on it. Chapter 12, in the books. I'll see you in chapter 13.